Welcome to Fueling Conversations, a sport nutrition education network podcast with Dr. James Fleming. In today's episode, we're joined by two incredible athletes, Rainbow-Cooper and Fabienne André, Paralympians and champions in their sport. They share their inspiring journeys into parasport, how they transitioned into marathon and sprint events, and what it takes to compete at the elite level while balancing work and life with a disability. We dive into the unique challenges they face, from training and equipment to the travel logistics and navigating the classification system in wheelchair racing. Eden and Fabienne also give us glimpses into their everyday life, the power of mutual support, and how they fuel and recover as high-performance athletes. They reflect on the limited research available for para-athletes, offer insights into the nutritional approaches, and even reveal their go-to celebratory meals. It's a powerful, honest, and insightful conversation about performance, perseverance, and parasport. Let's get into it.
Hi guys, and welcome to the Sports Nutrition Education Network. Excited today to be joined by two awesome athletes. So we've got Fabienne here and Eden, two hopeful Paris Olympians and current Boston Marathon champions. So we're going to delve straight in, and just to caveat this, they're both para-athletes, but this session is going to be mainly about the journey and some of the nutrition stories and challenges and logistics behind being an athlete, and also an athlete that works more so than conditions, but we are going to obviously touch on that as well. So if I start with, just a big thanks for coming in, and I feel like we've lucked out because literally last week Eden won the Boston Marathon, which is awesome, and they're not getting paid much for this, so we've done an absolute, we had a really big result here. Anyway, can you introduce yourself please, Eden, and just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into parasport, and then how we've got into this transition of marathon reasonably succinctly if we can, and that's a loaded question.
So I'm the current British record holder for the 5,000 metres and marathon distance. I got into sport after 2012 through my school. I started year 7 right as 2012 was sort of coming to an end, so they were really big on trying to get more disabled kids into sport, so I tried it then, and that was kind of that. But in terms of the marathons, it was just post-COVID, and I had sort of come away from the sport a little bit to sort of just get over, I had COVID really bad, get over that, and just rethink what I wanted to do. And I was tempted back in by the chance of the Commonwealth Marathon. So I spent about 2 months training for my first marathon in Paris, which went really well. Got to the Commonwealths, got a silver medal there, and then ever since then sort of consistently doing marathons and having my positions going up quite rapidly in the marathon world to last week coming away with the win at Boston, which is just quite unbelievable.
How many marathons have you done then today?
I've done 13.
And can you just talk us through kind of the key training associated with doing that kind of distance? Because if we're talking about being in the chair compared to a traditional able-bodied marathon runner, like what are the key differences in terms of like your lungs, or like is it just your shoulders that are burning out, or like can you give us a bit of an indication to that?
The training is long, so because in the racing chair we have less pressure on our bodies than the runners do, we do longer sessions, so you're sort of looking at 100 to 110, maybe a few more miles a week. In the chair, often doing a lot of long pushes mixed in with a couple gym sessions a week, but nothing too major. A lot of it to do is like injury prevention stuff. And for me, sort of being in the chair for such a long time, I've got full feeling in my legs, so it's a full body ache by the end of it, you know. Being sat in a kneeling position, it isn't the most comfortable. And then where your back hinges quite a lot when you're pushing, and the shoulders, and also your neck is quite stiff because you're constantly looking up in the racing chairs to look in front of you. So it's definitely by the end of a hard marathon, you know, with lots of kicks and sprints in it, you need a good rest.
And I guess that's an interesting one, because we were just saying, actually, you've done the London Marathon a week after the Boston Marathon, which seems absolutely insane, and you were saying your body's a little bit wrecked at the moment. Did you do anything specifically to, what's your recovery kind of regime now from a nutrition standpoint, just the last couple of days? Because I feel like after 2 marathons you deserve, I don't know, some ice cream or something.
Yeah, it's definitely getting back into just normal food. Being away and being at hotels for the marathons, your nutrition, it changes slightly because you aren't in control of what you're eating as much. So it's now getting back home, getting back into a normal routine of food and eating a lot to make sure my body recovers properly at the moment for sort of this week afterwards, and then it goes back into a more training-based nutrition plan. You know, I'm having a few days off, so it's kind of just a time to refill, refuel, and enjoy my food.
Cool. Can you just give us a bit of a indication into your disability, and then if you can for the audience, kind of try to explain the classification system as best you can, because I know that can be quite a tricky one.
Yeah, so I'll start with classification. For the classification in wheelchair races, you have a T30 something or a T50 something. The 30s are neurological disorders or disabilities, whereas in the 50s you have spinal cord injuries. So I'm a T54, which is the highest classification you can be as a wheelchair racer, which means that my legs are the only thing affected and my trunk and arms aren't. For a 53, it means that their trunk is affected as well as their legs, and then the 34s, it depends on the severity of the neurological disability.
And you'd never race a 53 as a 54?
So, actually, that's where it gets confusing. As a 54 and a 53, on the longer events, you race together because it's deemed that their trunk isn't as important in the longer events. So from 1500 onwards, we race as one, whereas I, as a 54, would never race a 34 in a Paralympic Games or something like that. Yeah.
Sometimes we get mixed events where it's done by points.
Yes.
In like a Diamond League, for example, though.
Yes, exactly.
And the Diamond League, there's more of those that have come around in the last 12 months for para-athletes, or?
Yeah, they're starting to get more and more. However, we normally see it as maybe one or two para races. So quite often it's a sprint or maybe an 800 metres. Yeah.
Nice. And Fab, same question really. Can you introduce a little bit about yourself, how you got into sport at the start, and then how you've ended up being in the events that you do, and then a little bit about your disability and then classification too, if that'd be great.
Yeah, okay. So I started, I actually got into wheelchair racing having been a swimmer previously. I was introduced into parasport when recovering from an operation. And yeah, then I swam for a while, but I started wheelchair racing in end of 2018. I started training. 2019, I did my first few competitions, and I kind of did quite well quite quickly. So got internationally classified and classified fairly quickly. Went to the European Championships and subsequently the Tokyo Paralympics, and I've gone on to Commonwealth Games and World Championships since. And yeah, last year, I guess in the World Championships, I got third in the 100 metres.
That was a 1, 2, 3, right? GB
yeah,
1, 2, 3. I love that picture.
We did England 1, 2, 3 at the Commonwealth Games, which was amazing. That was my first kind of podium with number 1 and number 2 in the world there as well. So that was incredible, and first time racing in front of my parents as well. So that was really cool. And then yeah, I managed to repeat it at the World Championships last year, and we'll see what opportunities come up going forward.
Love it. And then can you just give us a little bit about your disability, and then again what classification you fit into? I know Eden's touched on it a little bit.
Yeah, so as Eden said, those with neurological conditions like myself are in the 30 categories. I have cerebral palsy and I was born with it, and it impacts on my coordination and my ability to control my movements and my muscles. It impacts my whole body, but my lower limbs are more affected. And yeah, I guess that kind of explains it. I'm at 34, so I'm the highest class of the neurological conditions because I've got the most kind of, or the impact of my impairment is the least out of 33 and 34, but there's only 2 classes really. So.
It's quite interesting from someone obviously outside of this space to think about the classification system. It feels like for maybe those that are disabled looking at getting into sport, having that classification, it might seem like quite a harsh or quite a daunting prospect. Is that something that was it pretty straightforward for you guys? Was it like, okay, I'm going to give this a go, oh, I'm really good, and all of a sudden you've flown into like, you know, the world stage and started to...
I feel like you kind of get pulled forward for classification once you start something, once it's relevant to you. It's different across all the different sports. So having been a swimmer previously, my classification in swimming is completely different. The best place to go to find out about classification is the Lexi, which is on the Channel 4 website, I think, still.
We'll put it in the notes, actually. It's just an interesting one, because I follow a bit of tennis, and I know Alfie Hewitt, there was a big thing in the news about him maybe being classified as not disabled enough to be a wheelchair tennis player, and it was going through the idea that this might be his last Wimbledon maybe 12 months ago, 18 months ago, and now they've said your classification is your classification. I guess, is that even feasible that your classification could change within it is?
Absolutely, not so much for me, but classification is quite complex.
Right.
And there are very small differences in wheelchair racing specifically between all of the classifications. So you'd first get nationally classified, so you can race in the country and get onto the national rankings, and then from there you can go to certain competitions abroad and get internationally classified. Okay. Once you're internationally classified, for a 54, that pretty much sticks, unless it comes under question, which doesn't happen so often. But the 34s and the 33s, that, I believe, is it every 4 years you have to get reclassified?
Yeah, I think now it's every 4 years. It used to be every 2.
Yeah, because it's when you start as a 34, as you get stronger and you work to sort of change your impairment almost to get faster, that can then affect your classification and move you up as a classification because you are stronger. And there are some difficulties navigating that, but that's never on the athlete. You go to your classification and it's always on the classifiers to make their best decision on what you should be.
And I guess ultimately you guys went into stuff reasonably late, like in terms of the wheelchair stuff, and you've just enjoyed it and you've had success and you've carried on. I assume has it been like that, or has it not been quite as?
For me anyway, personally, I just wanted to try another sport. Originally I went into it wanting to do a triathlon, became pretty good at athletics and decided that I was going to carry on. And I think the amount of time and effort and energy you put into training compared to how much you compete or the ability to kind of earn from it or anything like that, you have to enjoy what you do, but I don't know, I can't speak to you.
Yeah, mine's a little bit different because I started quite early on. So I started when I was 12. And went through the junior rankings and did everything because you sort of would like to as a junior. Went to Junior World Championships and saw that progression. But for me in the marathons, it's not till later on that you can do a marathon anyway. So the progression going from track to a marathon it's quite a big jump, especially for me because I was younger as a marathon athlete. So a lot of the time it's being able to navigate those sort of the way that you train. And yeah, it's not always straightforward. As Fabienne said, it's a hard sport. It's not just about your athletic ability. It's being technical. It's knowing your equipment. It's about predicting like the moves that other people are going to do during your race. It's a lot more time consuming than it may seem on the outside.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that, I think, the equipment and the logistics and all these things that probably people just completely take for granted. I guess people might be thinking, well, how have I managed to get 2 world-class athletes together? So can you give us a bit of a backstory about how you guys are currently living together, how you met each other, that kind of stuff, and how your dynamic works with regards to nutrition as well, because I think obviously that's going to be our focus as we move forward here.
Yeah. But we met at the Weir Archer Academy when we were both training there. And we trained there together for a few years, sort of since Fabienne joined, And then living in London is expensive, but for both of us, it was the best place for us to be to train for the road and the track, and at the time having coaching options up here. So we decided that it would give us the best possible option and chance to succeed in our sport, to sort of come together and find somewhere to live together and try and progress. And also having someone that understands how to navigate life, sport, nutrition, all of those sort of things as an elite athlete that's also still a young person.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, like, because I think we both wanted to move out from our parents. We were both living with our parents still at that point, and I think it was just about trying to optimise our opportunities looking forward and going towards a Paralympic year, really.
Yeah, I think as well, in terms of nutrition, for us, it's very different. Fabs is a sprinter, me as an endurance athlete. So it's about almost when one of us is doing the weekly shop, sort of having those two different ways that we both eat come as one to make sure that we have everything in the house that we could possibly need as two.
Who's the chef? Is there a chef?
You are the better chef of the two of us, but we both cook. It depends.
Yeah. It depends who's there at the time, you know. It's the track and the road has a bit of overlap, but not much. So quite recently, especially, I've been away a lot with the marathons, and then I'll be back, and Fabienne will be away for the World Championships.
In terms of, so I'm just thinking from like a physiology standpoint. So we talk a lot about like carb loading in obviously marathons, but also in sprinting, and also making sure that our muscles are saturated with glycogen. The research in para athletes is minimal. There's stuff coming, it's on the horizon, but it's nowhere near, you know, the able-bodied, I guess, population. So how do you navigate that? I know that at St Mary's, I'm going to plug this, that we obviously gave you some nutrition support from some of our students, and that's worked beautifully with Kate and Olivia. I might give a big nod to those because they're still working really well with you guys. But how do you navigate that space of like, well, I think this is what I need to do, or is it more like a trial and error, or how's that worked for both of you? And
well, I think for me personally, that I always had quite an interest in nutrition, eating well, and thinking about what I was putting in my body to help my recovery and things like that. But I think the step up that working with you guys at St Mary's and working with Olivia and Kate has been for us is just fine-tuning how do we apply that to our individual situations, and then equally, like, how do we come together and know that we've got everything we need to perform, and how do we also just amend things without having to always do completely separate things when we're preparing.
I think for me it was a bit different. I like food. Like, not the Fabs, but I like a good bit of chocolate. I like sweets and stuff, and as you know, as
I'm a cake fan.
Yep, she does make a lot of cakes. But as a junior athlete, it almost doesn't matter so much because it's not quite as serious, if I'm being honest. It feels super serious at the time, and of course it is to us as an athlete, but it's a very different ball game. So when I started working with Kate, when I started in the marathons, we do so much trial and error. I mean, we're still figuring it out, you know, we're trying different things every time, and for me it's more about in-race nutrition that is the most important.
She told me she was super pleased that you took an energy gel recently.
Yes,
she was
because
buzzing about that.
I kept on dropping them in training. I lost so much money through dropping Morton gels in training that when I did it in Boston, that's pretty much
But then again, like logistics, we were talking about it, Fabs, before, like you're pushing, again, this is probably ignorant from me, but you're pushing your chair. You've got your stuff, I don't know where you put your stuff, you can maybe tell us this, and then how do you find the time between pushes to go, I need to open this, I need to get it in my mouth, I need to stay on track? Like that applies to both. Maybe yours more in training because you're obviously more of a sprinter.
Yeah, I was going to say, I probably wouldn't refuel in a race or anything like that. That's more about timings and understanding, kind of fine-tuning that for me, and that was where my focus was inside of competition, and I do a lot of focus on recovery because the sprint stuff is
exhausting.
Like, well, it's intense. Well, the intensity's the same but different in a sense.
But then you might have multiple events in a day, right? Or multiple. So therefore, you need to kind of tailor in for that aspect. And I remember us saying that you were thrown straight into the Tokyo Olympics, and then all of a sudden, you guys, the heat and humidity. You were travelling alone. It was COVID. It was all of this.
Yeah, there were a lot of things to consider, and
Go on, Eden.
Yeah, for me it's a bit different because we have to carry everything in the marathon. We don't get given the carbs, and we don't have sort of someone being able to give us nutrition during the race.
But not on the side of the road like you see on...
Yeah, absolutely not. And we can't take help off people. In the marathon, if you take help off people in the wheelchair race, you're disqualified. You don't get that help unless it's medical. So not only do we have to take spare tyres with us in canisters to refill our tyres if they puncture, but we also have to take as much liquid as we think we'll need. But every litre you have, it's a kilogram more, so you don't want to take too much. And we have to take our gels. So for me,
is that underneath then?
Well, you'll see a lot of people have a foot pod, which is closed in, and they put their water bag through there. I don't have that, but I just sort of shove my water bag through my legs.
Okay.
And I hope it stays there, which it has so far. And then in terms of a gel, you have to be as pre-prepared as possible.
About half ripped or...
Yeah, so I'll rip off the top and I'll tape it to my frame. And for each marathon, it's different where you want to take the gel because, for instance, in Boston, there's Heartbreak Hill, which is horrific. So you want to take your gel in time that it is kicked in before that point.
How long in is that?
It's between miles 17 and 19.
That's late then, yeah.
Yeah,
horrible.
so for me, it was about taking my gel so it hits just in time for me to go up that, but still gives me energy going on.
Nice.
In London, it's a bit different. It's a little bit later in the race, but you have to time it to perfection. Because if you're in a pack and they make a break, if you've not got your glove on, you're gone. So it's all about in the race, you really have to feel the right moment and take a risk almost and hope it pays off.
Interesting. I think it's probably a good time to make it real kind of clear that you guys are not full-time athletes at the moment. So that other area of kind of nuance here, how can you just talk us through some of the logistical and or financial kind of complications or challenges that you have as para-athletes and how you kind of navigated that or are currently navigating that space?
Yeah, do you want?
Yeah, so racing is a super expensive sport. You know, to just get a very standard racing chair, you're looking at £3,000-4,000 for a frame, plus an extra £1,500, £2,000 for pretty standard wheels as well. We've recently seen some newer technology chairs come in, but you're looking at £40,000 to get them, which is just almost unattainable. And so for me, I've had to have a job to be able to keep funding myself. So I'm very, very lucky in the terms that Tarmac allows me to sort of work around my training schedule. Nice. They've been really great for that. But if I didn't have that job, I don't think I'd be able to afford, one, living up here and doing the sport. You know, tyres are expensive, gloves are expensive. Everything is expensive in wheelchair racing.
They're all consumables and they get used up and you have to replace them.
Yeah.
And that's without even making any upgrades to improve your equipment to give you better chance.
It's hard to find the funding for that because you almost need someone to take a chance on you and hope that it's going to work.
Does the same apply, Fabs, for racing chairs for sprints as well? Is there still like the F1 chairs compared to?
I think it's maybe the disparity is a little bit different in marathons compared to the track, as in they're very much more further forward in the marathons with how much of a difference they make.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that's the same on the track, but correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I would agree with that, yeah.
And yeah, but I think in terms of the consumables, obviously with marathons you do a lot more miles, but even in the training behind the track you still do a fair number of miles.
For sure.
And so yeah, I also work part-time. I'm really lucky that my work has kind of gone with me on a lot of this athletics, and they have allowed me to flex and change my contract to be able to work around what I do, and I still travel quite far to work. But the thing is, you need the work not only from a financial perspective, but I think it also puts it into perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong, but just gives you a bit of a grounding, because I feel like we have so many kind of obligations outside of sport that are related to the sport, that sometimes you need something that's totally different, and you need that routine, and you need I've got the commitment of my work as much as I can do this for the sport, or yes, I've got these media things I need to do because I've done this competition or this is coming up. And I think it's just really good to have a different string to your bow, because ultimately, one, you need to earn money, but two, you need to make sure you're prepared for after the sport as well.
Sure. You never
and
know
if
what's
you were
going
to get injured or anything like that, at least you've got something that means you've not put your everything. Well, you should put your everything into the sport, and we do.
But not all eggs in one basket. You've still got a few eggs that are in other baskets.
I think it keeps you sane.
Yeah.
You know, sport is everything. It's all consuming. Having something outside of that, for me personally, makes me a better athlete.
How do you navigate though, like the amazing feeling of when you got the medals in front of your family for the first time and winning the Boston Marathon? How do you navigate like the influx of all of a sudden, like, you know, I assume English Institute of Sport, all of a sudden, like, you're more on the radar, or there might be some financial, there might be more media attention, all of a sudden you're in newspapers, media articles, whatever, that you've not had, and then you go, back to work. Is that something that you've obviously is relatively newish for you guys, but is there anything that you do from like a psychological perspective, or is there someone that goes, Eden, stop being an idiot, just come back to normal, whatever, same like Fabs, come on, get down from that cloud, or is there anyone there that you kind of just go, is there anything there you could kind of share?
I think, to be honest, I think both of us kind of do that for each other in a sense, because it's always like, you've done this amazing thing, but can you please be quiet because I've got to go on a meeting now, or like, I'll see you in a few hours because I've actually got to work.
Yeah.
I think that is the advantage as well of living with another athlete and living together, is we get what it's like to experience those things and to experience those moments where you're like, oh, I've got to do all this media. And I think sometimes all the obligations, and correct me if I'm wrong again, but if you kind of don't even have time to take it in before you're on to the next thing or preparing for the next thing, and actually that's where the work, for me personally, becomes really important, because I'm like, yeah, I might be on to the next thing, but I can be a little bit excited at work, and then I've got something that's just not changed. Like you go back to it, and it's your bit of familiarity that isn't trying to navigate something new and something kind of unknown, really.
Yeah, and to add to that as well, it's quite humbling living with, for me, like, I live with Fabs, who's current European champion. She's world medalist in the bronze, Paralympian. So I come home, I'm like, oh, I've won the Boston Marathon. And she's got her medals on the table, like, yeah, look at this.
I love it. So
No, I like the celebration as well. But I think also, like, it's just nice to know, like, it's really hard to explain how it feels when you win something and then you're trying to process all those emotions but get ready for the next thing. And I feel like it's nice to know that, I mean, I hadn't seen you since Boston Marathon, and I just knew that you'll come to me when you're ready to talk about it, or you need your own time and your own space. And I think that's what I found really hard, like when I was still living with my parents, and all this kind of the European Championships
blew up, didn't it?
Then Tokyo happened really quickly, and no one understood why I just didn't really want to speak to anyone. Like you end
just
up
need
doing
the
so many
debrief.
things. You need a moment just to settle. And
it must be nice that you're on a similar trajectory, both very much at the start of your career, and both obviously heavily driven, I assume, to becoming, the best you can be. Is there like a competitiveness between you, or is it?
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Like, let's be real. There is always competition in everything. Like you can't get around it. And when our training schedules are similar, when I get back on track and stuff, there is the thing of we'll train together. We'll do certain things if we're both doing starts. There's always that, and it's sort of like, okay, there is that competition, and it drives you to go better, and especially with sort of gym stuff, it's
really helpful.
What would be the fairest race for you guys to go up against each other?
20-metre start.
What, for you to win? Is that
No, because I am horrific at start. There's a reason I do long distance.
So, no, but I think, kind of to add to that, I think it's really, what I like about it is that there is competition between us, but we're not direct competitors, so we can play around and have fun about the competition side of things, but we also get that there is
what a lovely thing to have, and to be in a position where hopefully you'll be going to Paris and be able to celebrate each other's successes and be there for each other irrespective of what happens. I just wanted to flag one thing about you. Mentioned, like, okay, you've got a part-time worker, athlete, engineer. Talk to me about the idea of being an engineer.
There's always something going on in the house. In terms of,
we have a room dedicated.
We do
to
have
our chairs.
Complete room dedicated with so many spares, and it's there's always something to fix on a racing chair because they're getting battered. Just getting absolutely battered with the elements.
So much force. And we have to mostly train outside, so you're out in all weathers and.
We have a lot of spare bolts just hanging about that's like, do you reckon this will work?
Give it a go.
But it's nice to be able to be like, oh, have you tried this? Or like be able to bounce ideas off of how to fix things. And I'm really lucky actually that I have someone who helps me with my chair and like trying to fix it. So I'm always bringing ideas back home and we play around with them. And
But I remember how important that is, because I remember the first time you said to me, Fabienne, about when you get on a flight and your chair's going into an airplane and you're there going, I just pray that it gets to the other side and it's not too battered. And you're talking about like a £30,000 or whatever, however much it is, doesn't matter. It's your kind of, without it, you
it's
can't.
Your shoes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the equivalent of your shoes.
And yet, we've all seen what people do on aeroplanes. Like, you'll be lucky to get.
I mean, a lot of the time we're actually lucky if it even shows up. We're seeing more and more cases of wheelchair athletes who are arriving to a race and not just their racing chair isn't showing up, but their day chairs aren't showing up.
It's unbelievable.
It's really difficult because, of course, we want to keep our equipment as protected as possible. It takes months and months to get a new one. It's not like if it breaks, we can get a new one straight away.
Right?
It's completely bespoke, and they're so expensive. It's if it breaks and you don't have something to fix it, it could take you out for an entire season.
But then even like the psychological kind of aspect with that is pretty huge.
There's so many unknowns. You almost can't think about it because if you thought about it, you'd
never get forward, would you?
You'd never go anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's horrific.
I guess bringing it back, it's really nice to have that context because I think this wider context is important for the audience as well as for those that hopefully go in and offer better support and more support to aspiring or para-athletes, because I think this space obviously needs a lot of support. If we go back into kind of your biggest nutritional considerations, so on a normal training week, let's say, what are your key nutrition focuses? But we'll aim that one to you first, Fabs, and then maybe if you can say what your biggest kind of tweak has been in the last few years that you've noticed, if you can get both.
Yeah, so I think for me personally, because I want to be fresh and ready to train the next day, it's all about recovery and making sure I get enough in. And so, yeah, I think we spent, the start of my career was all about how do you fuel for a competition, because I might have had that context in swimming, but it's different for wheelchair racing. And then, yeah, now it's much more of the how do you optimize your training and minimize the impact and improve the recovery so you can go again and make things even better. And I think I guess from starting in COVID as well and then going on to where we are today, my travel has significantly increased from when I first started out. So it's all about making sure we work on keeping my immune system strong and making sure that I'm able to adjust to all the different time zones, and I don't travel half as much as you. So,
how do you manage aeroplane food?
I normally take my own stuff, to be honest, and I am very well known for taking far too much stuff wherever I go, but I like to be prepared for all eventualities, and it generally comes in handy, not just for me. So
that's nice. And yourself, Eden?
Yeah, mine's a little different because the miles creep up and up and up. So for me, the biggest challenge is fueling myself enough for stuff. You know, you can chuck in protein shakes after you train. Those are pretty swift to get down. But, you know, training twice in a day, working in between it, we're up early. You know, I'm up early training every day. Yeah. But then it's finding the time to eat enough food before I go out and do like 40k on the road, you know? It's difficult to do that and digest it as well, because we're on our stomachs. So every single thing that's in our stomach we can feel when we're pushing, essentially. And it makes a huge difference. You know, if we're a little bit bloated from what we've eaten or it hasn't fully gone down, it's uncomfortable in the chair. So that's been a really big challenge to try and sort of mitigate that. Which we're still kind of figuring out as the days go on, and it changes in winter and summer and all those sort of things that go along with it. But yeah, it gets there, and we find that for me, I have to switch it up a lot to keep things sustainable.
Can you talk us through what like a typical double session day might look like, and what you typically would do from a fueling perspective on a normal day, if that makes any sense? Yeah,
so say on a day where I have a road session and a track session, it would get up. I'm a big fan of a bagel, which seems to be like that's pretty good fueling for me before I go out training. Then a lot of the time it would be on the road doing sort of anywhere from an hour and 15 minutes up to 2 hour long session on the road.
Fueling during, or more like just a bit of fluid every now?
Yeah, so I try and take on fluid every 5k. I find that that's quite an easy way to maintain what I need. And then I'll take a gel or I'll take some sweets, whatever's easy, to sort of have halfway or just whenever I feel I need it. then it's typical like protein shake, trying to get more carbs in so that I can have enough to go again.
Yeah, nice.
So I'd normally have a snack on the way home along with like a shake, and then I'll go and have my lunch sort of 2 hours before I go to a gym. Go to the gym, keep topped up on fluid, back from the gym, try and have some chicken, something like that.
Nice.
Maybe not a protein shake again, and then try and have a big dinner full of carbs, full of protein.
Do you guys
to
eat
keep me
together,
going.
like when you can, or is it not always
Just depends on our schedules, I think. Like sometimes we do, but I guess when we're both working and training, and then like we've been away for different competitions or training opportunities as well, so
our schedules
really
almost
depends.
become a bit opposite at times, which makes it really difficult to keep up on stuff. But there's a lot of leftovers in our house.
There's always leftovers.
Always leftovers for
The
people
fridge
to
is
eat.
generally always full. So.
Always full.
Can
Yeah.
you talk us through your typical day then as well, like a double session day and what you might eat?
So it's fairly similar. I just think the quantities are maybe a bit different. Well, not maybe, definitely a bit different. Because of the mileage. I guess
Go-to breakfast?
porridge. I always have porridge. I take it
Every
wherever I
day.
go, and everyone laughs at me for that. But yeah, I either make it the night before or make it first thing.
Overnight, yeah,
and
nice.
And then I'll eat, and I try to eat and then do a bit of work before I go to the track.
To give
or
your body a bit of
something.
time to digest and...
Or sometimes it depends. If I'm in work, then I have to go early and go down to work, and then I will be working in the day or whatever. And before I go to the track, I'd normally try and have like something in the afternoon just to tide me over, because otherwise I just get
of course.
hangry, don't I?
Everyone, that's me. My wife tells me off every day.
And then refueling at night. And I think for me, it's just about making sure I've got the snacks ready for before and after training. Really.
Yeah, because logistics seems to be even more than the stereotypical elite athlete. Like with everything else you've identified, like hopefully the audience that are aspiring sports nutritionists, they're thinking, wow, this is the complexities associated.
It's not just what you eat; it's like the ability to prepare it for us
absolutely.
and have it ready and have it ready to have.
I mean, for both of us, it's super difficult to get a wheelchair accessible kitchen, so we both have to stand when we cook, which is so draining once you've trained between sessions. So a lot of the time it's about meal prepping, having something to go, or just sort of willing yourself to get up and do it. It can be really difficult having that time management.
And that's something, again, like we just don't know the ambulatory cost of energy. Like it's so different, it's so nuanced. There's some numbers out there, but again, if you're doing it for one day and you're on your crutches for an hour or for 5 minutes, and that's where the research needs to come. I guess from a condition-specific perspective, is there anything that your condition means that you are more conscious of from a nutrition standpoint? Like, does your condition lead to a greater need for hydration or whatever? Is there anything specific that...
Yeah, I think for me, not necessarily it needs it, but definitely staying hydrated, keeping sort of my organs healthy and happy is #1 priority.
Nice.
And also maintaining like a high protein to try and mitigate muscle wastage in my lower body, because that's such a huge thing, especially as like I get older and older. So it's really important, not just that I fuel myself for sport, but just in general, keeping super healthy and keeping my body happy and what it needs, and listening to it when it's craving something specific. Whether that be red meats or lots of vegetables with iron in it, that's like those are very typical for me, for my body to say, you need this now to keep going.
And do you both, as opposed to both, do you both get like blood screens? Like, is that something that's part of the English sponsorship, or is that just something you take off your own back because that's like a medical need, or is it more of a athlete specific?
As part of, or being on the programme with British Athletics and like performing to the level we do, we end up having blood screening every so often.
Okay, nice.
And normally in the winter and summer, and then that tells us.
It's a nice indicator, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. In terms, again, same question to you, Fabs. Is there anything with regards to your condition that you have to be particularly careful of, or you pay particular attention to with regards to nutrition?
I think for me, it's just that if I'm up and about more, or from day to day, it really varies, like how many calories I burn from what I'm doing day to day. So I think it's just about making sure I get enough in, really, and it's same applies, really, just listening to your body. If it's craving something, that's what it needs. I end up being a bit more, or fine-tuning my diet a little bit because there are certain things that don't agree with me. But like that's the
just
support
learning
the
on the job,
nutritionist, and I just learn what works and what doesn't.
And I guess we've spent quite a bit of time talking about, for both of you again, getting sufficient energy in. And again, the research is still a really difficult thing for anyone to know how much calories we need during a day. Do you guys do anything specifically with regards to body composition? I would lose myself for hours on this space, but do you have access to do you weigh yourself? Do you get skin fold assessment? Is there anything in that space that makes you know that, okay, I've just upped my load to do multiple marathons? I want to make sure I'm fueling myself but not losing muscle mass for yourself, like you've already identified from a health perspective, but also performance. And yourself, like I'm assuming, Fabs, is that a lot of yours is power related, so we need to try and build and maintain or in some, more muscle. And so how do we navigate that how do you navigate that as athletes at the moment?
So for me personally, we sort of took a base point when I first started working with Kate, and we base all of our research off of what we've already had from me.
Nice.
So if I'm feeling a bit weak or feeling a bit tired, we tend to do sort of skin fold and like muscle mass, weigh ourselves. But it's not necessarily in the forefront of mind. It's more about how I feel when I'm in the chair. And I think as a younger athlete myself, being 22, we try to take the focus off of how my body looks as more to how my body feels.
Yeah, I love that.
Just to try and keep a healthy relationship with food and with body image. But yeah, if there's something that I think maybe I'm not feeling quite my best, it's definitely something that we look at.
But I guess you've also, by having a metric somewhere, you know if you've deviated miles off.
Yes.
Things change anyway and fluctuate, and ultimately, you've got the performance metrics that are like, I'm flying, I'm good, and that's the feedback that's really
you feel
important.
it from your chair as well.
Yeah, and you'll know that as an athlete who's not just done it overnight, and you've had support, and I think that's definitely the right way to go by. Is it similar for yourself, Fabs?
Yeah, I was going to say it's very individualised and it's, for me, it's mainly based on what does it feel like, or is there an area I'm really struggling with, or something, rather than necessarily the metrics. Not that we don't take them, but again, same reason really, just not to focus on that element, because ultimately we measure performance on how we feel.
I think as a para-athlete as well, the differences in every single person's bodies are much more than that of able-bodied athletes.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously everybody is different, but with different disabilities you have different water retentions, different muscle mass, different fat mass. It's so different that it's
not really comparable.
Yeah, it's not comparable to anything but yourself, and I think there's just not enough research for us to even know where to begin.
And I still think, even if we extrapolate and we think 5-10 years down the line, I think we'll have better prediction equations based on mass and height and those sorts of things. But I still think ultimately the message will be work with the individual, even more so in your cases. I think what you are doing and what Olivia and Kate are doing is great, and how you've built that relationship. And I think I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to pose a few more questions. And one of them, I guess, is for those people that are looking to get into supporting athletes and or para-athletes, what would you recommend in terms of how they navigate sensitive conversations around conditions? Because I remember when I walked into the Weir Archer Academy and I was like a bit sort of taken back, if I'm honest, because I haven't been really involved with other people with disabilities, let alone disability-based parents that were there watching and aspiring athletes. And then I saw David Weir and I was like, my head fell off, like, all of this happened. But what would you say in terms of how I or someone would navigate and just start supporting someone? Is there anything you could share on that?
Yeah, so I think it always depends on age group as well. There's a lot of young kids that are in the sport, which I kind of think that maybe they just need some general guidance, sort of like, don't eat sweets and chocolate every day. Don't skip breakfast, trying to sort of come up with easy, simple meals as well for the parents.
Nice,
because, as a kid, you can't do that. But it's really important as a young, aspiring athlete that you have a basic knowledge of that. But in terms of sensitive things sort of surrounding conditions, I think the main thing is don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask what people's limits are and what their boundaries are. Say, look, I want to know more about your condition so I can help you, but I don't want to overstep. And if I do overstep, I want you to tell me so I understand those boundaries.
Great.
Most people, we're not so fussed about what you say as it seems. I understand that it seems sensitive, but for most para-athletes, it's not really. There's hard limits. There aren't really any.
And I guess if you know they're there to help, and obviously we placed Olivia and Kate intentionally as female nutritionists with 2 female athletes. We thought that would be better, but we also knew they had their approach, which was really personable. Yeah. But I think it's really important because there is some research out there about cerebral palsy, about different conditions, but actually, and going away and doing your homework is always going to be necessary, but having the conversations with the individual about that nuance as well, and not being scared to do so. It's a bit like me, I work with female athletes, and me not talking about the menstrual cycle is massive. It would be a complete madness, really. So you can't skirt away, and you almost get more respect, and you get more from it, because if we didn't ever speak out your conditions, then you're not going to get where you are, really. Absolutely. You know, you have to. So I guess it's a two-way thing, maybe.
You have to understand them as an individual, and I think it's understanding what the individual wants out of it as much as what you can provide them with.
Absolutely.
In a sense, because there'll be certain people that are like, oh, like I'm really interested in nutrition and I want to know like what I can make or what I can do, and then there'll be certain people that are like, I know I need to eat, but I don't have an interest in what it is, and it's not even that, but just understand. I think if someone personally, if someone's interested in what it's like for me and what would help me as an individual, rather than, but then I think, like you say, it depends on the age group and where they're at in their sport as well.
And I think irrespective of condition, most young people's education knowledge is limited in the UK. There's, schooling covers real base levels. I think it probably applies to everyone. I'm going to start wrapping up because, and I feel like I've missed so much stuff, because obviously I know the girls reasonably well, and there's so many things I'd love to speak about, but I'm conscious of your time, and to lose 2-3 hours of our lives. We'll definitely do another one of these another time. But let's fast forward to Paris. Let's think positively. With you're in the squad, and let's hope. And you, let's say you've both achieved what you want to achieve. I'm not going to say any more than that. Okay. You get back home. What's your go-to celebratory meal?
Bottle of champagne and Chinese takeaway.
Oh, I love it.
Game over.
What are you going for, Chinese?
Or salt and pepper prawns.
Nice choice, yeah, like that.
Special fried rice.
Okay.
Curry sauce.
Good stuff. And a bottle of champagne, that's good. That's well deserved. And yourself?
I reckon I'll probably have a steak, to be fair, and probably make a cake, and probably take some kind of alcohol of some description that doesn't taste like alcohol, if I'm honest, because I'm not a big fan, but I feel like it's worth it for a celebration. I think after the Commonwealth we had strawberry daiquiris, didn't we?
We did have strawberry daiquiris. They were phenomenal. Yeah. And after the games as well, you haven't drunk in so long that it only takes a whiff and you're off.
Like,
so it's great. Yeah.
And then, and cake. What cakes are we making? What's the go-to? What would you say is the best cake that Fabs has made so far today? Oh gosh,
all of them are actually incredible.
Get her on Bake
Quite
Off.
different.
Yeah, facts. Fabs loves a brownie. So
yeah, that is true.
Once a week there is a tin of brownies at the
you've had a result there, Eden.
Rhubarb cake, also incredible. Just anything. I mean, I'm not much of a baker. I cook, so Fabs bakes and I just eat all the sweet treats. And they fuel the marathons.
It's good, because otherwise I'd eat them all, and that would be
Look,
less.
bring them to St Mary's. I'm working in my dad's bod. Yes, thanks so much for your time. In terms of if we wanted students or those people listening to the podcast to sort of follow your journeys, where's the best place for them to do so? I mean, and if you can share it with us, we'll put it on the thread. Is there anywhere that we could kind of keep an eye on?
So for me, sort of Facebook page, just Eden Rainbow-Cooper, Instagram, which is Eden Lily T54, and also through my club, which is Red Velvet Racing Team on Instagram.
Nice. And yourself, Fabs?
Yeah, and I think similar for me. So through my Instagram, which is Fabienne _ 1996, and through my Facebook page, which is Fabienne André Athlete, and then through my athletics club as well, which is Harlow Wiltshire Racing Club.
Love it. We will leave them in the feeds, and from me, every time I speak to you guys, I know I spoke to Fabs more than Eden, and following the journey and how kind of random it came around that we even met each other in the first place from just me going. I was actually in the PEC talking to someone and saying, "Oh, where are you guys? Where do you train?" "Oh, we're Archer just in Kingston," and then popping down to 3-4 years later talking to and seeing your journeys is amazing, and having any small part of that with some of my students doing all the hard work is something I'm really proud to see, and I really look forward to seeing your journeys and kind of having more conversations hopefully in the future. So yeah, thanks so much for your time. So busy, super busy, but watch this space. Hopefully we've got World Champs coming up. What's the next thing? What's your next comp? Paralympics, happy days, good stuff. We'll have the stash next time we speak. And thanks again for your time, guys.
Thank you so much, and thanks to St Mary's as well for all their support of us and being able to allow us to access this support from nutrition perspective, and also like the PEC and the facilities.
Lovely, thanks so much.